Greetings! Welcome to Nina's World. This podcast provides a short respite from the trials and tribulations of everyday life. We're going to step back in time to the 1950s and 60s. And now, our story. Nina meets Buddy. I don't make a big deal about it. Suddenly, the long, hot days of summer that had stretched out in front of Nina became staccato, countable days until the next school year would begin. After a slow start in first grade, Nina picked up the pace and earned some highs on her report card, which were better than low or middle. But what did those marks mean anyway? It was the teacher's comments that Nina's mother wanted to read. It said, "Nina often daydreams in class. Nina will read better if she reads more often. She has trouble with comprehension. Please encourage her to read this summer and talk about what she read." Her mother retorted, "Nina, you're a perfectly good reader, but we'll get some books from the library, and you could read stories aloud to your sisters." That was okay with Nina. She liked to read and to listen to stories being read. Nina often thought about the stories later, wondered why this or that wasn't that or this. And Nina knew the teacher was right. She did like to daydream. It was more interesting than listening to whatever she was talking about. It was more fascinating to watch the birds building their nest under the eave of the roof than pay attention to Dick and Jane. There were still enough days for long walks in the forests and fields of Horace Park. Her older siblings would swim across the creek to the big rock, splay themselves, and soak up the sun. Nina couldn't swim and was afraid of the water. She would only walk out until the stream was up to her chin. Even then, she eagerly headed for the embankment. They'd eat PB&Js and drink from the park's water fountains. Occasionally on their way home, they'd snap a pear or apple from the branches in the orchard. Nina had to gnaw at it with her big girl teeth because it was still so hard and frankly didn't taste like much even when she could break off a chunk. The week before school started, Nina and her sisters went to the school to help the teachers prepare the classrooms. It was so much fun. Nina imagined she was the teacher and accepted every task as preparation for her future career, although she also wanted to be an airline stewardess. Carrying books to another classroom or placing them on individual tables, making sure each desk had the correct books, seemed like a game. She would listen to the conversations that the teachers had with each other. A new principal was going to be assigned to the school. Mr. Langer's wife was going to have a baby. Mrs. Wagner was going to teach second grade. The school's secretary popped her head into the classroom and said, "Nina, welcome back. You're going to be in second grade next year, aren't you?" "Yes, Mrs. Ridgway." Nina nervously twisted her ankle in circles, wondered how Mrs. Ridgway knew her name and grade instead of confusing her with one of her sisters, which seemed to be the story of Nina's life. Gosh, Nina's older sister Dorothy had brown eyes, and her younger sister Martha, red hair. How could people confuse them? Mrs. Ridgway checked a notebook and continued, "This is wonderful. You're going to be in Mrs. Wagner's classroom in September, and we have a new student who'll be in the same room. I'd like to introduce him to you. Would you mind coming to the office with me?" Nina looked at the teacher she had been helping, who nodded her head and encouraged Nina to go along to the office, thanked her for the help, and gave her a Hershey chocolate bar with almonds. She would eat that on her way home. Down the hall and around the corner they went, until Nina could see a woman and a boy about her age, though a little taller, standing in the lobby. Mrs. Ridgway was talking in a cheerful voice to the woman. Yes, I thought I had seen Nina, and here she is. She and your son will be in the same classroom, Mrs. Wald. I thought it would be good to introduce them. Nina, this is Mrs. Wald. Nina said hello in a slightly squeaky voice and shook her hand the way she had been taught. And this is Robert. Nina had been eyeing him since she had come into view. He had blondish hair and now saw he had a nice smile. He spoke up first. Hello, nice to meet you. Everybody calls me Buddy. He reached out to shake her hand at the same time that Nina had. In that instant, Nina noticed that Buddy's hand was deformed, and only one broad finger and a thumb. She pulled her arm back, embarrassed and confused, didn't know what to do, looked at Mrs. Ridgway. Buddy laughed a little and said, Don't worry, Nina. A lot of people are surprised when they see my hands. I don't make a big deal about it. It's okay. I was born this way, just like my dad. I hope we can be friends. Buddy put his hand out to Nina again. She pushed her arm forward, placed her hand in his, but was afraid to squeeze it. He did enough squeezing for both of them. And when he let go, she shook her hand a little. Buddy continued, I have a strong grip from playing baseball. I hope I didn't hurt you. You play baseball? Sure. I could do almost anything, just like all the other kids, although math is not my favorite subject. What about you? The grown-ups walked away a bit as Nina and Buddy started talking. Nina was nervous. She had never met anyone like Buddy before, but the conversation began to pick up. Nina remarked, I love to read and listen to stories. Sometimes I need help with the big words, and sometimes I don't understand everything when my older sisters are reading, but I love the sounds. They went back and forth. Buddy continued, I have an older sister and brother. That's nothing. I have 2 brothers and a lot of sisters. Martin, Dorothy, and Martha are in Maple Avenue School, too. We have to walk, and it's a long way. Oh, my brother Martin is on the Little League team, and sometimes my sister Rosa has to act as the referee. Hey, want me to show you the multi-purpose room and library? Sure, let's go. Without even asking permission, Buddy and Nina went off down the hall. Nina pointed to the doors for the boys' room and the girls' room. She felt like a tour guide at the museum. They sat in the cafeteria, now filled with boxes and cleaning equipment, and ate the chocolate bar. They agreed it tasted really good. When Nina arrived home later that day, she told everybody about the new boy in her class, how he didn't like math but played baseball. She bragged about showing him around the school, and later, as she was getting ready for bed, realized she had never mentioned anything about his hands, never even thought about them, because that simply wasn't important. The end. Thank you for visiting with us today. If you like what you heard, please subscribe to this podcast and share it with everyone you know. Return next week for another story from Nina's World. This story was written and read by Christine McKee, with gratitude to Dr. Ethel Ratkin of Bucks County Community College for editorial consultation and encouragement. Additional heartfelt support from family, friends, and members of my writing groups. Technical support was provided by Mr. Dan Tarrant of Personally Catholic. Sound engineering by Mr. Andrew Kimlock of AK Productions. May you embrace peace in your heart, in your home, and in your world.